Hello and welcome to the second part of Workshop 5, Interacting with your students online. This video introduces the Community of Inquiry framework. Before we begin talking about the Community of Inquiry framework, let's take a few moments to read some research findings that relate to communities and online learning. First, research indicates that community, or a sense of belonging, plays a critical role in academic success and persistence in higher education. Second, one of the most consistent problems associated with distance learning environments is a sense of isolation due to a lack of interaction. Number 3, student persistence is strongly predicted by their degree of academic integration, meaning performance, academic self-esteem, and identity as a student, and social integration, meaning personal interaction, connection to academic community, etc. Research shows us that a sense of community positively impacts student success and persistence. One of the barriers that we have with online learning is that communities do not spontaneously form the same way that they do in many face-to-face classes where students form relationships, ask each other questions, and share resources. We need to create ways for online students to develop a sense of community. The Community of Inquiry framework provides a way for us to establish communities of inquiry in our course design and facilitation. This Venn diagram illustrates the three elements of the community of inquiry. Each of these elements, social presence, cognitive presence, and teaching presence, are necessary to create the optimal educational experience. And as you can see, the elements overlap in many ways. Together, they create the educational experience. We're going to talk about each of these elements, and then in the next set of videos, I will share examples of ways to include each of the three elements in your course. We know that having a connection to the academic community increases persistence. So let's talk about social presence first. In online courses, it's important to provide opportunities for students to develop a social presence. This includes providing students with opportunities to identify with their peers and ways to project their personal characteristics. This often happens naturally in a face-to-face course as students greet one another, ask questions, and collaborate on assignments. In online courses, we must purposefully build in these opportunities into the course. We must also create a learning environment where students feel safe and comfortable communicating and exchanging ideas with one another so that they can develop interpersonal relationships. You may be wondering what social presence looks like in an online course. It may be exhibited as emotional expression as students use humor, disclose information about themselves, or even through the use of emoticons. It may also be exhibited as groups gel in an online discussion or in other interactions. Students may be complimenting one another, agreeing with one another, asking questions, referring to each other's statements, quoting each other, or simply continuing discussion threads. To promote social presence, it's important for instructors to establish a safe space where opinions are respected and everyone is included. Another way to foster social presence is to require students to address each other by name during online discussions. Establishing the cognitive presence gives students opportunities to construct meaning by communicating and collaborating with their peers throughout the course. These opportunities include exchanging information, making connections, reflecting on what they've learned in the process of learning, and applying new ideas. What does cognitive presence look like? The cognitive process model reflects the critical thinking process, and the model both includes reflection and collaboration. There are 4 phases. The first phase is the triggering event. During this stage, a problem or an issue is identified and recognized. The event may be presented by the teacher or may be identified by the students. In situations where students are identifying a problem or issue, the teacher will direct and focus students so that they achieve the desired learning outcomes. For example, in an education course, the instructor may present students with a scenario that includes learner characteristics, specific Common Core standards, constraints, and a time period. The then students would be required to design a unit or a lesson that addresses the scenario. The second phase is exploration. During the exploration phase, students learn more about the problem. They brainstorm, research, question, and exchange information to gather and evaluate relevant information that's needed for the task. Some of this exploration takes place independently, and some is shared with other students. The third phase is integration. While the second stage is divergent, during the third stage, students begin to construct meaning from what they have learned during the exploration stage. During this stage, students analyze and reflect both independently and with their peers as they apply new understandings to the problem or issue. Teachers guide students with probing questions, additional information, and modeling. The fourth stage is resolution of the problem or issue. During this stage, students present or teach their lesson or unit. Teaching presence relates to the design and the facilitation of the course, as well as how instructors direct the cognitive and social processes in the course. This means establishing the curriculum, sharing meanings and information, and focusing discussions to direct learning. As I'm sure you know, students can and will add teaching presence to your course as well. Here's a link to a concept map that illustrates the elements of the community of inquiry. I would love to share this map as a handout, but it's too big. In the center of the map, you see the three elements: cognitive presence, teaching presence, and social presence. As you move out, you can see the characteristics of each element. For example, you can see that teaching presence includes instructional design, facilitating a course, and direct instruction. As you continue to move toward the outer edges, you can see more information about the teaching presence as well as examples of ways to include it. The map can be found on the Community of Inquiry website, communitiesofinquiry.com, and I have included a link to this concept map in the resources folder for this workshop. Teaching presence is the most important role of the instructor. This statement by Tinto explains the role of the instructor. What instructors do in the classroom is critical to learners' sense of scholarly belonging and ultimate persistence in their academic pursuits. There are three main components relating to teaching presence: instructional design, facilitating the course, and direct instruction. Planning and designing the course begins well before the course starts and includes developing learning objectives and assessments, setting the curriculum, like materials, activities, and discussions, and establishing time parameters. Facilitating the course happens while the course is in progress and includes reading and responding to discussion posts, supporting student learning, maintaining discourse to support the social and cognitive presences, modeling and setting a climate for learning, commenting, encouraging, reinforcing, identifying areas of agreement and disagreement, and helping students to reach a consensus, drawing reluctant learners in, and assessing the effectiveness of the process. Direct instruction includes presenting content or materials, providing specific feedback, focusing discussions, injecting new knowledge, diagnosing misconceptions, referring students toward resources, and responding to student concerns. Research supports that attending to these presences leads to positive student outcomes in online courses, as well as increased student satisfaction, higher retention, and improvement in some aspects of class performance. Things to think about. As you begin to think about your course, in what ways are the social, cognitive, and teaching presences already present in your course? And where in your course are there opportunities for adding teaching, social, or cognitive presence?